The ventilation shaft was narrow and dark. Danny crawled through first, with Kira right behind him. The metal walls pressed against his shoulders. Dust filled his lungs with every breath. But he kept moving. There was no time to stop. They reached a junction where the shaft split into 3 directions. Danny pulled out a small scanner and checked for life signs below. 20 meters down, he found a cluster of heat signatures. Survivors. They were huddled together in what looked like a storage room deep in the mining tunnels. "Found them," Danny whispered. "Follow me." The shaft led to a grate that opened into a maintenance corridor. Danny pushed it aside and dropped down. The corridor was empty and dark. Emergency lights flickered on the walls. He could hear gunfire somewhere above, distant but constant. The raiders were still searching for survivors. The squad gathered behind him. Torvin barely fit through the shaft opening. His massive body scraped against the metal as he pulled himself through. Zillith slipped out like water. Fenthel and Corys moved in perfect silence. "The storage room is ahead," Danny said. "We secure the survivors first. Then we arm up." They moved through the corridor like shadows. Every door they passed was checked and cleared. Every corner was taken with weapons ready. The training kicked in automatically. They had practiced this 100 times in simulation. But this was real. The blood on the walls was real. The body of a mining worker slumped in a doorway was real. Kira paused to check the body. Dead. Hours ago. Single shot to the chest. Danny nodded and kept moving. He could not afford to stop for the dead. Not when the living still needed him. The storage room door was sealed from the inside. Danny knocked 3 times. Coalition rescue team. Open the door. Nothing happened. Then a voice came through the metal. Scared. Shaking. "How do we know you are not raiders?" "Because raiders do not knock," Danny said simply. A long pause. Then the door slid open. Inside, 23 survivors were crammed into a space meant for equipment. Men and women and children. Their faces were pale with fear. Some were injured. All of them looked at Danny like he was their last hope. A woman stepped forward. She was older than the others, with gray hair and a bruise on her cheek. "I am Supervisor Ellen Grant. Who sent you?" "Admiral Sifican. We have backup coming in 5 hours. Our job is to keep you alive until then." Ellen's face fell. 5 hours? The raiders will find us before then. They have been searching every tunnel. It is only a matter of time. Danny looked around the storage room. He saw mining equipment stacked against the walls. Drills, cutting tools, canisters of compressed gas, containers of industrial chemicals. His mind started working. "We are not going to wait for them to find us," Danny said. "We are going to make them regret ever landing on this moon." He turned to his squad. "Torvin, grab those gas canisters. Zillith, I need you to strip the wiring from those drills. Fenthel, find me anything that can hold pressure. Chorus, start breaking down those chemical containers. Kira, prep your medical kit. We are going to need the flammable compounds." The aliens hesitated. They had never done anything like this before. Their training had always assumed access to proper weapons and equipment. They had never learned to improvise. Danny grabbed a mining drill and started taking it apart. "Watch what I do. Learn. Adapt." His hands moved fast. The drill came apart in seconds. He pulled out the power cell and the motor and the spinning blade. He connected the power cell to a new circuit made from stripped wires. He attached the blade to a simple trigger mechanism. In 90 seconds, he had built a motorized saw weapon that could cut through Vraxian armor. Torvin watched with all 4 eyes wide. "That is impossible." "No," Danny said. "That is human." The next hour was chaos. Danny moved from person to person, teaching and building and adapting. He showed Zillith how to make explosive charges from mining chemicals and power cells. He taught Torvin how to turn a gas canister into a pressurized projectile launcher. He helped Fentel wire the corridor with triple arms, using spare sensors and broken equipment. Even the survivors joined in. Ellen Grant organized the workers into teams. The engineers built barricades from mining carts. The scientists mixed chemical compounds that would burn through armor. A young man named Paul West figured out how to overload the tunnel lighting to create blinding flash bombs. By the time Danny finished, they had an arsenal. "This is insane," Zilla said, looking at the collection of improvised weapons. "None of this should work. These are not real weapons." "Everything is a real weapon," Danny replied. "The only difference is whether you know how to use it." A beep came from Fontal's scanner. Movement in the tunnels above. The raiders were getting closer. "They found us," Cora said. Quietly, Danny picked up his flamethrower. It was better than the one he had built in the assessment. Bigger, hotter, more fuel. Positions. Everyone knows their job. Let them come. The survivors retreated to the back of the storage room. The squad spread out through the corridor. Torvin crouched behind a mining cart with his projectile launcher ready. Zillith held 3 explosive charges in her quick fingers. Kira had her medical kit in one hand and a chemical sprayer in the other. Fentel and Chorus waited in the shadows with weapons drawn. Danny stood at the center of the corridor. He could hear footsteps now. Heavy boots on metal floors. Raxian raiders coming to finish what they started. The first raider appeared at the end of the corridor. He was huge, covered in dark armor, carrying a weapon that glowed with energy. He saw Danny and raised his gun. Danny pulled the trigger first. Fire erupted from his flamethrower and engulfed the raider. The armor melted. The creature screamed. More raiders appeared behind him, and the battle began. Torvin's projectile launcher punched holes through armored chests. Zillith's explosives collapsed sections of the tunnel. Kira's chemical sprayer blinded 3 raiders long enough for Fentel to cut them down. The triple arms went off, and flash bombs filled the corridor with light. The raiders had expected scared miners hiding in the dark. They had expected easy targets. They had not expected this. Danny moved through the chaos like he was born for it. His flamethrower ran dry, so he dropped it and grabbed a cutting tool. A raider charged at him, and he ducked under the swing and drove the spinning blade into the gap between armor plates. Another raider came from behind, and Danny threw a chemical container that exploded on impact. "There are too many of them," Fentel shouted. "Keep fighting," Danny shouted back. "They will break before we do." And they did. The Vraxians had been raiders for generations. They had conquered dozens of outposts across the Outer Rim. But they had never faced anything like this. They had never faced humans. After 40 minutes, the last raider fell. The corridor was filled with smoke and fire and bodies. Danny leaned against a wall and tried to catch his breath. His hands were shaking. His clothes were burned in a dozen places. But he was alive. Torvin walked over and looked at him with something new in his 4 eyes. It might have been respect. It might have been fear. Probably both. "When you built that weapon in 12 seconds, the Crocian said slowly, "I thought it was a trick. Some kind of human deception. I did not believe it was real." Danny laughed weakly. "And now? Now I believe." Torvin looked at the bodies of the raiders and shook his massive head. "I believe that humans are the most terrifying species in this galaxy, and I am very glad you are on our side." Kira appeared beside Danny and started checking his wounds. "We held them," she said quietly. "All of us, together." Danny nodded. "Yes, we did." The survivors emerged from the storage room. Ellen Grant looked at the destruction around her and then at Danny. "You did this. You taught them to fight like you. Like humans." "I taught them to survive," Danny said. That is all we know how to do." 5 hours later, the Coalition rescue fleet arrived. They found the outpost secured. They found 43 survivors out of 47. They found a corridor filled with dead raiders and improvised weapons that looked like something from a nightmare. And they found Danny Cole sitting in the middle of it all, waiting for them with a smile on his face. The galaxy had wanted to know what humans were capable of. Now they knew. 1 month had passed since the battle at Kepler 441. Danny Cole stood in the Grand Chamber of the Coalition Council, facing the most powerful beings in the known galaxy. Representatives from 47 species filled the curved rows of seats that rose toward the dome ceiling. Every eye in the room was fixed on him. Admiral Sithikan had called this assembly. The footage from the mining outpost had spread through the military ranks despite all attempts to keep it classified. Everyone had seen what Danny and his squad had done. Everyone had seen what humans were capable of. Now, they wanted answers. "You have been called here to explain," Sithikan said from his seat above the chamber floor. "The Coalition must understand what we witnessed at Kepler 441. We must understand what humans are." Danny stood alone in the center of the room. He was wearing his standard uniform with no medals or decorations. He had refused them. He did not want symbols. He wanted to be seen for exactly what he was. "I will try to explain," Danny said. His voice carried through the chamber without amplification. "But I am not sure you will understand, because what I am about to tell you is not something that can be learned. It is something that must be lived." He paused and looked around the room. So many different species, so many different worlds, so many different ways of existing. And yet they had all built the same kind of civilization, safe, comfortable, protected. From the chaos of nature, humans had not had that luxury. My species evolved on a planet that was trying to kill us every single day. Danny began. "The weather could destroy our homes in minutes. The animals saw us as food. The plants produced poisons. The water carried diseases. Even the ground shook beneath our feet and opened up to swallow entire cities." He walked slowly across the chamber floor. "We were not the strongest creatures on our world. We were not the fastest. We did not have claws or fangs or venom. We were soft and weak and vulnerable. By every measure, we should have died out millions of years ago." A murmur passed through the audience. Some of them knew human history. Most did not. "But we survived," Danny continued. "We survived because we learned something that no other species on our planet understood. We learned that everything around us was a tool waiting to be used. A rock could become a weapon. A stick could become a spear. A bone could become a knife. Fire could be captured and controlled. Water could be directed. Even the animals that hunted us could be turned into allies or food." He stopped walking and faced the council directly. "This is not training. This is not education. This is instinct. It is written into our blood and our bones. Every human child learns from birth that the world is dangerous and that survival depends on using whatever is available. We do not wait for proper tools. We make them. We do not wait for weapons. We build them. We do not wait for safety. We create it." Admiral Sithikan leaned forward. "And this is what we saw at Kepler 441. Humans turning mining equipment into weapons of war." "Yes," Danny said. "But it was more than that. You saw humans teaching others to do the same thing. Torvin and Zilith and the rest of my squad, they learned to see the world the way we see it. They learned to find weapons where none existed. They learned to survive." Councilor Meistern spoke up from her seat. "Some in this chamber believe that humans are too dangerous to integrate fully into the Coalition. They argue that your species could turn against us at any time, that you could weaponize anything we give you." Danny nodded slowly. They are right. The chamber went silent. Humans are dangerous, Danny said. We have spent our entire history proving it. We have fought wars that killed millions of our own kind. We have built weapons that could destroy our planet 1,000 times over. We have hurt each other in ways that would horrify every species in this room. He paused. But we have also done something else. We have survived. Every plague. Every disaster. Every war. We are still here. And we are still growing. He looked up at the assembled representatives. You have a choice to make. You can see humans as a threat and try to contain us. You can limit our access to resources and technology. You can keep us on the edges of your civilization and hope that we stay quiet. And maybe that will work for a while. His voice grew stronger. Or you can accept us as we are. You can recognize that the same instincts that make us dangerous also make us valuable. You can put us on the front lines where our ability to improvise and adapt can save lives. You can trust us with your most difficult problems and watch us find solutions that no one else could imagine. Danny walked toward the council seats. Security officers shifted nervously, but no one stopped him. My squad fought beside me at Kepler 441, a Croatian warrior who had never held an improvised weapon in his life, learned to build projectile launchers from gas canisters. A Veluxy engineer who believed in proper tools learned to make explosives from industrial chemicals. Two silent soldiers who had trained their whole lives in standard tactics learned to fight like humans. And together, we saved 43 people who would have died without us. He stopped directly in front of Admiral Sithikan. That is what humans offer the Coalition. Not just our strength, not just our creativity, but our ability to teach others to survive, to show them that weapons are everywhere, that danger can be transformed into opportunity, that the universe is not something to be feared, but something to be mastered. The Admiral stared at him for a long moment. Then he stood up slowly. I was wrong about you, Sithikan said. The words came out like they cost him something. When I first saw that footage of you building a flamethrower in 12 seconds, I thought you were a monster. I thought your entire species was a threat that needed to be controlled. He looked around the chamber. But I have studied the reports from Kepler 441. I have spoken with the survivors. I have watched your squad members transform from skeptical allies into devoted comrades. And I have come to understand something important. The Admiral turned back to Danny. Humans are not monsters. Humans are survivors. And this galaxy needs survivors more than it knows. Councilor Misterin rose from her seat. I move that the Coalition Council vote on full military integration for humanity. Human-led rapid response units. Human training programs for improvised combat. Full partnership in all defensive operations. The vote took less than 10 minutes. The result was unanimous. 2 weeks later, Danny stood in a training facility on the far side of Station Meridian 7. 20 alien students sat before him. Croatian, Veluxy, Silent, species he had never worked with before. They looked at him with a mixture of curiosity and nervousness. Welcome to improvised combat training, Danny said. By the time we are finished, you will never look at the world the same way again. He held up a simple metal pipe. What is this? A pipe, one student answered. Wrong. Danny smiled. This is a weapon. This is a lever. This is a tool. This is a shield. This is whatever I need it to be in the moment I need it. He tossed the pipe to the nearest student. Now you try. Tell me what this could be. The training had begun. In the back of the room, Kira Vaughn watched with quiet pride. Beside her stood Torvin and Zilith and Fentel. They had become instructors too. They had learned to think like humans. Now they would teach others. Do you think it will work? Zilith asked. Can't we really teach the entire coalition to see the way humans see? Kira thought about it. She thought about Danny in that assessment chamber, building a flamethrower in 12 seconds. She thought about the look on the aliens' faces when they realized what he had done. She thought about the battle in the tunnels and the moment when Torvin had called humans the most terrifying species in the galaxy. "No," Kira said finally. "We cannot teach them to be human, but we can teach them to survive. And sometimes that is enough." At the front of the room, Danny picked up another object from the table. A simple battery pack. Harmless by itself. Dangerous in the right hands. "Now," he said to his students, "let me show you what you can really do with this." The lesson continued. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, the enemies of the coalition heard whispers of what was coming. Whispers of humans who could turn anything into a weapon. Whispers of soldiers who could not be disarmed because they carried their arsenal in their minds. The galaxy had changed. And it would never go back to the way it was before, because now everyone knew what happened when you told a human to improvise. A weapon. They made a flamethrower in 12 seconds, and that was just the beginning. The footage played on the screen for the 5th time. Admiral Sithikan watched it with the same expression he had worn the first 4 times. His face was stone. His eyes were cold. His hands were folded behind his back. The video showed Danny Cole standing at the table. The timer started. And then something happened that should not have been possible. The human moved with a speed and purpose that did not match any combat training the Coalition had ever recorded. His hands knew exactly where to go. His fingers worked without hesitation. In 12 seconds, he had built a weapon that could burn through military-grade armor. "Play it again," the Admiral said. The technician nodded and restarted the footage in the corner of the room. Counselor Mistrin sat in silence. She was a Veluxi diplomat with decades of experience in species relations. She had pushed hard for human integration into the Coalition. She had argued that humans would bring new perspectives and valuable skills. She had believed that the small species from the edge of the galaxy deserved a chance to prove themselves. Now, she was watching a human build a flamethrower from garbage in less time than it took her to. "Blink. This is not exceptional," Admiral Sithikan said quietly. "That is what disturbs me most." Mr. looked at him. "What do you mean?" The Admiral turned away from the screen. "We pulled historical data from the human archives. We studied their military history, their survival patterns, their technological development." He paused. "This behavior is not unusual for them. It is baseline." "Baseline?" Mr. repeated. "Their species has been building improvised weapons since before they had written language. They made clubs from bones. They made axes from rocks. They made explosives from fertilizer. They made weapons from kitchen utensils in their prison facilities." The Admiral's voice was flat, but there was something underneath it. Something that sounded almost like respect mixed with horror. Humans do not just use weapons. They see weapons everywhere, in everything, all the time. Mesterin stood up slowly. "Admiral, I understand your concern, but this could also be seen as an incredible advantage. If humans can create weapons from nothing, imagine what they could do in a crisis situation. Imagine having them on our side instead of against us." "That is exactly what worries me," Sithikan replied. "What happens when they decide we are the enemy?" The question hung in the air. Neither of them had an answer. 3 levels below the command center, Danny Cole sat in a white room with no windows. A security officer stood by the door. A camera watched him from the ceiling. He had been here for 4 hours now. Nobody had told him why Kira had been taken to a different room. The rest of his squad had been sent to their quarters. Danny was alone, and he was starting to get annoyed. The door opened. Instructor Vethral walked in, followed by a silent scientist that Danny did not recognize. They sat down across from him at the small metal table. "We need to conduct additional testing," Vethral said. "This is not optional." Danny leaned back in his chair. "Testing for what?" The scientist placed a small box on the table. Inside were random objects: a piece of wire, a battery, a strip of cloth, a metal tube, some kind of chemical packet. "We want to see if you can do it again," the scientist said. "Build a weapon. Any weapon. From these materials?" Danny looked at the box. Then he looked at Vethral. "You want to know if it was luck? If maybe I just got lucky the first time?" "Yes," Vethral admitted. Danny reached into the box. His hands moved almost on their own. The wire wrapped around the metal tube. The battery connected to a simple circuit. The chemical packet attached to the end. In 9 seconds, he had built a small explosive device. He set it gently on the table. "It is not luck." The scientist stared at the device with wide eyes. Vethral had gone very still. "How?" the instructor asked. "How do you do this so quickly?" "Our engineers take minutes to design simple devices. You do it in seconds without even thinking." Danny thought about the question. He thought about his grandfather in the workshop, teaching him that every broken thing could be fixed. He thought about his mother, showing him how to make toys from scraps when they could not afford real ones. He thought about growing up on a planet where everything was dangerous. The weather, the animals, the plants, the other humans. "We had to," Danny said finally. "Our world was trying to kill us from the day we were born. We did not have time to think. We had to act. We had to survive. And the ones who could build things, the ones who could turn rocks into tools and tools into weapons, they were the ones who lived long enough to have children." He picked up the explosive device and carefully disconnected the battery. "This is not training. It is not education. It is instinct. It is written into our blood. Every human learns from childhood that anything can be a weapon. A rock, a stick, a piece of glass, a belt, a chair. Everything around you is either a tool or a threat. Sometimes both." Vethral looked at the scientist. The scientist looked back with an expression that Danny could now recognize. It was the same fear he had seen in the assessment chamber. "Your species," the scientist said slowly, "evolved on a death world." Danny nodded. "That is what the Coalition calls it. We just call it home." The room was silent for a long moment. Then the door opened again. Admiral Sifican walked in. His presence filled the small space like cold water. He looked at Danny with eyes that seemed to be calculating something. "I have watched your test footage," the Admiral said. "All of it. The original assessment and the follow-up tests. Do you know what I see when I watch those recordings?" Danny met his gaze without blinking. "I am guessing you do not see a friendly ally." "I see a threat," Sifican said bluntly. "I see a species that can turn any environment into a battlefield. That can create weapons from materials we would consider harmless. That moves with a speed and purpose we cannot predict or control." He paused. "I see something that scares me, and I do not scare easily." Danny stood up slowly. The security officer by the door tensed, but Danny did not move toward anyone. He just stood there, looking at the Admiral. "You are right to be scared," Danny said quietly. "Humans are dangerous. We are violent. We are unpredictable. We have spent our entire history fighting each other over land and resources and ideas. We have invented weapons that can destroy our own planet. We have come close to extinction more than once because of our own stupidity." He took a step forward. The security officer's hand moved toward his weapon. "But here's the thing you need to understand, Admiral. All of that violence, all of that danger, all of that creativity that scares you so much, We can point it in any direction we choose. We can be the worst enemy you have ever faced. Or we can be the best friend you will ever have. Danny smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of a predator who knew exactly how dangerous he was. The question is not whether humans are dangerous. We are. The question is whose side we are on. Admiral Sithikan stared at him for a long moment. Then he turned and walked out of the room without saying a word. Vethrol and the scientist followed. The door closed behind them. Danny sat back down and waited. He did not know what would happen next. He did not know if the coalition would embrace humanity or try to destroy them. But he knew one thing for certain. The galaxy had just learned what humans were capable of. And nothing would ever be the same again. In the observation room above, Counselor Mysterin watched the recording of Danny's speech. She played it 3 times. She studied his face, his posture, his words. Then she smiled. "He is exactly what we need," she said softly. "The coalition has been at peace for too long. We have forgotten how to fight. We have forgotten how to survive." She looked at Admiral Sithikan. But the humans have not. They never forgot. They never stopped. The Admiral said nothing. But somewhere deep in his calculating mind, he was beginning to wonder if maybe, just maybe, she was right. 3 days passed. Danny was released from the testing facility, but told to remain on the station. His squad was reassigned to light duties while the coalition leadership debated what to do with the human problem. Danny did not like being called a problem, but he understood why they saw him that way. Kira found him in the observation deck on the 4th morning. It was a large room with windows that looked out into space. Stars filled the darkness like scattered diamonds. Danny was sitting alone on a bench, staring at nothing. "You look terrible," Kira said, sitting down beside him. "Thanks. I feel terrible." She was quiet for a moment. "I heard they classified all your test footage. Nobody outside of High Command knows what happened in that assessment chamber." Danny nodded. "They are scared of us." "Can you blame them?" "No," Kira admitted. "I cannot. But I also think they are making a mistake. Fear makes people do stupid things. It makes them see enemies where there are none." Before Danny could respond, his communicator beeped. It was a message from Instructor Vethrol. "Report to Command Center immediately. Urgent." Danny looked at Kira. She shrugged. They walked through the station together. The corridors were filled with aliens going about their daily routines. Most of them did not look at Danny. A few did, and their expressions were hard to read. Word had not spread about the assessment, but something had changed. Danny could feel it in the way people moved around him. There was more distance now, more caution. The command center was on the top level of the station. Security officers checked their identification 3 times before letting them through. Inside, Admiral Sithikan stood at a holographic display table. Counselor Mysterin was beside him. Vethrol waited near the door. There were other officers too, from species Danny did not recognize. "Something has happened," Sithikan said without greeting. "One of our mining outposts has gone silent. Kepler 441 in the outer rim." The holographic display showed a small facility on a rocky moon. Red warning symbols flashed across the image. "We received a distress signal 2 hours ago," the Admiral continued. The message was fragmented, but we heard enough. Vraxian raiders. Danny felt his muscles tighten. He had heard of the Vraxians. They were a species outside the coalition, known for brutal attacks on isolated settlements. They took prisoners for slave labor. They took resources by force. They showed no mercy to anyone. "How many people at the outpost?" Kira asked. 47 workers, scientists, engineers, families. Ren's voice was soft. "We do not know how many are still alive. We are sending a rescue team," Sithikan said. The nearest combat vessel is 6 hours away. But your squad is here. You can reach the outpost in 90 minutes. Danny understood immediately. You want us to go in first. Hold the position until reinforcements arrive. Yes, the Admiral looked at him directly. I'm asking you to do this, not ordering. Your squad is not a frontline combat unit. This is dangerous. People will likely die. Danny thought about the 47 people on that outpost. Scientists and engineers and families. People who had no idea that raiders were coming. People who were probably hiding right now, scared and waiting for help that might not come in time. He did not need to think about it for long. We will go, Danny said. Get us a transport. The shuttle launched 15 minutes later. Danny sat in the back with his squad. Kira was checking her medical kit. Torvin was sharpening a blade that looked older than Danny's entire species. Zilith was studying the outpost schematics on a tablet. Fentel sat in silence with his eyes closed. Coraz looked nervous, but his hands were steady. The outpost armory was destroyed in the initial attack, Fentel said finally. We will have standard sidearms only. Nothing heavy. That is not good, Torvin rumbled. Vraxians wear combat armor. Sidearms will not penetrate. Danny leaned back and closed his eyes. He thought about the outpost layout. A mining facility. That meant industrial equipment. Chemicals for processing. Pressurized systems for ventilation. Power generators. Heavy machinery. We do not need the armory, Danny said quietly. Everyone looked at him. The outpost is a mine, he continued. Mines have everything we need. Explosives for blasting rock. Chemicals for processing. Fuel for vehicles. Tools that can cut through metal. He opened his eyes and smiled. They have a whole building full of weapons. They just do not know it yet. Torvin stared at him. You are going to build weapons again. Like in the assessment. Yes, I am going to teach you how to do it too. Zilith made a sound that might have been a laugh. You think you can teach us to think like humans? To see weapons where there are none? I think I can try, Danny said. You do not have to be as fast as me. You just have to be faster than the Vraxians. The shuttle flew on through the darkness of space. Ahead, a small moon grew larger in the viewport. Somewhere on that moon, 47 people were waiting to be saved. Danny started planning. The first thing you need to understand, he said, is that everything is a weapon. Everything. That pipe on the wall? Weapon. That fire extinguisher in the corner? Weapon. The chemical in your standard issue medical kit? Weapon. He looked at Kira. Tell them what you can do with basic medical supplies. Kira pulled out her kit and opened it. This painkiller can cause paralysis in high doses. This disinfectant is flammable. This bandage adhesive can seal airways if applied to the face. This stimulant can cause heart failure if injected directly into muscle tissue. The alien stared at her in horror. Humans are terrifying, Coraz whispered. It was the most he had said in weeks. Yes, Danny agreed. We are. And right now, that is exactly what those raiders need to face. The shuttle began its descent toward the moon. Through the viewport, Danny could see smoke rising from the outpost. Some buildings were on fire. Others were dark. He could not see any movement, but that did not mean there was no one alive. Here is the plan, Danny said. We land behind the ridge and approach on foot. We avoid the main entrance and use the ventilation shafts to enter the mining tunnels. The survivors are probably hiding underground. We find them, arm them with whatever we can build, and hold the position until backup arrives. And the raiders? Fentel asked. Danny's expression went cold. We kill every single one of them. Nobody argued. Nobody questioned. They had seen what Danny could do with scraps from a table. Now they were going to see what he could do with an entire mining facility at his disposal. The shuttle landed with a soft thump. The ramp lowered. The air outside was thin and cold, and smelled like smoke. Danny stepped out first. The others followed. The outpost was half a kilometer ahead. Flames flickered from broken windows. Gunfire echoed in the distance. Someone was still fighting back. "Move," Danny said. "Fast and quiet. Stay low. If you see a raider, do not engage." Not yet. They ran toward the facility. The ground was rocky and uneven. The gravity was lighter than Earth standard, which helped. Danny's legs pushed harder with each stride. His heart was pounding. His mind was clear. 40-7 people. Families, children maybe, all depending on a squad with sidearms and a human who could build weapons from nothing. Danny reached the ridge and looked down at the outpost. He saw raiders moving between buildings. He counted at least 20. There could be more inside. "That is a lot of enemy combatants," Zilla said quietly. "Yes, it is," Danny agreed. He scanned the facility until he found what he was looking for. A storage building near the mining shaft entrance. The sign on the side said industrial chemicals. He smiled. But they have no idea what is coming for them. Danny Cole had been on Station Meridian 7 for 3 weeks now, and he still was not used to the way the aliens looked at him. It was not hate exactly. It was something closer to curiosity mixed with doubt. Like they were trying to figure out what he was made of and whether he belonged here at all. The station was massive. It floated in the empty space between 4 different star systems, and it served as the main training ground for the Galactic Coalition military. Species from dozens of worlds came here to learn how to fight together. They learned tactics and formations and how to use the standard weapons that the Coalition provided. Danny had learned all of that too. But he had also noticed something that the aliens had not seemed to figure out yet. The training was designed around their way of thinking, not his. He walked into the assessment chamber that morning with his squad. There were 6 of them in total. 2 humans and 4 aliens. Kira Vaughn walked beside him. She was the squad medic, a calm woman with steady hands and a sharp mind. Danny trusted her more than anyone else on this station. The other 4 were Coalition species. Torvin was a Crocian, a huge creature with gray skin and 4 arms. He looked like he could tear a shovel apart with his bare hands. Zillith was a Veluxi, thin and elegant with fingers that moved too fast for Danny's eyes to follow. She was an engineer, and she never let anyone forget it. The other 2 were Fentel and Chorus, both silent. They had smooth blue skin and large, dark eyes. Fentel was their squad leader. Chorus rarely spoke at all. The assessment chamber was a large circular room with white walls and bright lights. In the center was a long table covered with random objects. Danny saw metal pipes, chemical canisters, wires, batteries, sheets of fabric, and dozens of other things scattered across the surface. He did not know what the test would be, but his gut told him it would not be simple. Instructor Vethral stood at the front of the room. He was a silent like Fental, but older and more serious. His uniform was covered with medals that Danny did not recognize. When he spoke, his voice was cold and flat. "Today you will be tested on improvised weapon construction," Vethral said. "This is a standard evaluation for all combat personnel. You will be given 60 seconds to create a functional weapon from the materials on this table. The weapon must be capable of damaging the target drone at the end of the room. You will be judged on speed, creativity, and effectiveness." Danny felt something shift in his chest. It was not fear. It was something else. Something that felt almost like excitement. This test was designed by silent military engineers, Vethral continued. It is meant to evaluate your ability to adapt under pressure. Most species require the full 60 seconds to complete the task. Some require more time and are given extensions based on their biological capabilities. He paused and looked directly at Danny and Kira. Humans are new to the coalition. We do not yet have baseline data for your species. You will be given the same 60 seconds as everyone else. This is considered fair. Danny almost smiled. He knew what Vethril was really saying. The instructor expected the humans to fail. He expected them to fumble with the materials and run out of time. He expected them to prove that they did not belong here. Danny looked at the table again. His eyes moved across the objects without thinking. He saw the chemical canisters and noticed the warning labels. Flammable, pressurized. He saw the flexible tubing and the battery igniters. He saw the metal brackets that could hold things together. In his mind, pieces started clicking into place like a puzzle solving itself. Kira leaned close to him. "You see it too?" she whispered. Danny nodded. "Yeah, I see about 5 different ways to do this." The other squad members took their positions around the table. Torvin cracked his massive knuckles. Zilith studied the materials with her quick eyes. Fentel stood straight and calm. Chorus looked nervous. "The test begins on my mark," Vethril said. "Remember, you have 60 seconds. Use them wisely." Danny took a slow breath. His hands were loose at his sides. His mind was quiet and focused. This was not the first time he had built something dangerous from spare parts. Back on Earth, he had grown up in a small town where nothing ever worked right. His grandfather had taught him to fix engines before he could read. His mother had shown him how to make things from nothing. By the time he was 12, he could build a radio from scraps. By the time he was 16, he could hotwire any vehicle on the planet. Humans learned young that everything was a tool. Everything was a resource. Everything could be a weapon if you needed it to be. "Mark," Vethril said. Danny moved. His hands grabbed the pressurized canister before his brain even finished processing the command. He flipped it over and found the valve. His other hand snatched the flexible tubing and jammed it onto the nozzle. He grabbed a metal bracket and bent it with his fingers to create a handle. The battery igniter came next. He stripped the wires with his teeth and connected them to a simple trigger mechanism made from a bent piece of metal. The room was still. The aliens were just starting to touch the materials on the table. Torvin was examining a pipe with confusion. Zilith was sorting components into neat piles. Fentel had not moved at all. Danny aimed his device at the target, drone, and pulled the trigger. A jet of flame shot across the room. It hit the drone and melted through its outer shell in less than a second. The machine sparked and collapsed into a burning heap on the floor. The timer on the wall read 12 seconds. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. The only sound was the crackling of the burning drone. Danny lowered his weapon and looked at Instructor Vethril. The Silen's face had gone completely blank. His large, dark eyes were fixed on Danny, like he was seeing something impossible. "What?" Zilith whispered. "Was that?" Torvin stared at the melted drone and then at Danny. His 4 hands had stopped moving. "He made a fire weapon," Decrotian said slowly. "He made it in seconds." Kira stepped up beside Danny. She did not look surprised. She had seen humans do this kind of thing before. It was normal for their species. It was not normal for anyone else. Vethril finally moved. He touched a control panel on his wrist and spoke in a quiet voice. "End the assessment. Clear the chamber. I want this footage classified immediately." Danny frowned. "Classified? Why?" The instructor looked at him with an expression that Danny had never seen on an alien face before. It took him a moment to recognize it. It was fear. "Because," Vethril said slowly, "if the rest of the coalition sees what you just did, they will either want to recruit every human in existence or destroy your species before you become a threat." The words hung in the air like smoke. Danny looked at Kira. She looked back at him with the same thought in her eyes. They had come here to prove that humans belonged in the coalition. But now Danny was starting to wonder if the coalition was ready for what humans really were. The chamber doors opened, and security officers rushed in. They were not pointing weapons at Danny, but their hands were close to their holsters. Vethral waved them back and turned to face the squad. "This evaluation is over," he said. "You will all return to your quarters and speak to no one about what happened here. Is that understood?" The aliens nodded quickly. Danny stayed still. He had built a flamethrower in 12 seconds from scraps on a table. He had done it without thinking. He had done it because that was what humans did. And now everyone in the room was looking at him like he was the most dangerous thing they had ever seen. Danny. Cole smiled. Maybe they were right.